Hi, okay, so we're back now. We're going to be talking about the specific glands and their hormones that are being produced. Unfortunately, this is going to be very specific in which types of hormones are going to be produced and exactly what they do. So be prepared. It might be a little bit more boring than you hope for. But it needs to be done. All right, so as I said, we're going to start with the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is actually within the skull. There's an indentation on the sphenoid bone. If you remember, the sphenoid bone is the one that's behind the palatine, and it goes all the way up to around your temples and stuff. It's pretty funky butterfly-shaped bone. Anyway, so the pituitary gland actually sits in this little indentation in the bone itself, and then on top of it is actually going to be some of your brain tissue. So he's one of the best protected glands in the body because he's inside your skull. He's got an anterior and a posterior lobe that are in there, and they're just kind of about the size of a cherry, like they're kind of teeny. Um, Anyway, so we've got the anterior and posterior lobes that are there, and then there's actually there's a tube that is connecting the pituitary gland to the hypothalamus gland. This tube is called infundibulum, and the infundibulum actually has a really important role within the pituitary gland. Now, the pituitary gland used to be known as the master gland because he produces a lot of different hormones that regulate other types of hormones. Remember, that's going to be the hormone regulatory system. For instance, he affects, I believe it's the thyroid. And so, because he regulates a lot of these hormones, they used to call him master gland. But the reality is he's actually controlled by the hypothalamus. And remember, if we go back to the brain, let's see, that was a ways ago. I know about you, sometimes I forget these little minute things. So when we're talking about the hypothalamus, it's part of the diencephalon, and that's kind of the inner brain located between the cerebral hemispheres and the brainstem. And the hypothalamus, it's again, it's going to help in maintaining homeostasis. So the way that the hypothalamus maintains homeostasis in many ways is because of the pituitary gland and the fact that it regulates the pituitary gland. So hypothalamus is sort of like the big cheese, the big boss. It's in control of everything. And then the middle management guy is your pituitary gland. Okay. So, with the pituitary gland, as we mentioned, there's an anterior and a posterior pituitary gland. With that, move on to the next page. Okay, so as I said that there are two glands that are only sort of endocrine glands. One of them happens to be the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. So first we're going to talk about the anterior lobe, and then we'll talk about the posterior and the two of them that he only stores and secretes rather than actually produces. Okay, so the anterior lobe is going to produce a lot more hormones than the posterior and makes up 75% of the actual weight of the pituitary gland. There are 7 different hormones that are going to be produced by the pituitary gland, and they're ones that are really important. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the hormone adrenocorticotropic. This one has an abbreviation of ACTH. I don't know about you, but ACTH is a whole lot easier to say than adrenocorticotropic. So, if I say ACTH, that's what I'm talking about. Again, it's in the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Basically, what he's doing is that he is going to regulate the endocrine activities of the adrenal cortex. The adrenal cortex is part of the adrenal glands, which are by the kidneys. And so he's going to be part of that hormone control system. And he's especially going to be regulating cortisol secretions, and cortisol has to do with the digestive system. So that's first, adrenocorticotropic. We have human growth hormone, or HGH. Now, this one is within the Mendler's book. He's actually just called growth hormone or somatotropin. Anytime you see that ending tropin, that means that it's going to be a hormone that regulates another glands or hormone secretion. Okay, so this one is going to be, it's going to react on most body tissues, promoting protein manufacture. Let's see what it's saying here. It stimulates, yeah, so this is actually specific for bone and muscle growth. And again, it's going to be affecting you more. It's going to be released a lot more during your puberty, which is, you know, why they shoot up. My brother was a really good example of this. I actually was in Slovenia on my mission, and when I left, he was like super short, came up maybe to my chin, and he was 15 at the time. And then when I got back, he was almost a, well, he's now at 6'4", no, 6'3", but he was at least 6 feet by the time I came back. So he grew a good 10 inches in a very short amount of time. He had a lot of the growth hormone actually released. Okay, so so yeah, it's basically going to be stimulating muscle and bone growth, especially in the epiphysis or epiphyseal plates. So if you guys remember, the epiphyseal plates on the bones are where we actually have calcium cells, not calcium cells, but elastic, which would be the word that I'm not, cartilage, thank you. Anyway, so there's actually cartilage cells there rather than bone cells, because cartilage cells will reproduce or grow faster, essentially, than bone. And so the cartilage grows really fast, and then slowly it starts to ossify or become bone tissue. So the HGH or GH is going to help in stimulating that tissue growth. So obviously someone who has a shortage of this hormone is going to have some height issues, or those who are producing too much are going to become out of proportionally tall. Okay, so again, that's the growth hormone. Now, it also, while it's needed for cellular repair and maintenance, and it also stimulates the liver to release fatty acids for energy in times of stress, which I think is kind of interesting. So if you're really stressed and you need more of the fatty acids to help with your metabolic processes, then growth hormone is going to help with that. Okay. Next we have the thyroid stimulating hormone, which means it stimulates the thyroid. I know, it's that easy. Woo. And its technical name is thyrotropin. Again, that tropin means that it's going to control another gland. And again, it's just really going to help the thyroid actually work the way it's supposed to by regulating how much hormones it releases. Again, this is kind of an interesting implication in people who have thyroid issues, in that it could be that the thyroid is just not producing as much as it should, or it could actually be the pituitary gland not releasing enough of this thyroid stimulating hormone, or releasing too much. So so it's kind of interesting that it's not just an easy direct cause when the thyroid's not working right. There could be other implications of what's going on. But again, that's thyrotropin or thyroid stimulating hormone. Now, next one we've got here is prolactin. So lactin is the base word for milk, like lactating means you're producing milk within your mammary glands. So prolactin means like, ooh, help with the milk. So it's really stimulating milk production within the breasts. So usually prolactin will start to be released near the end of pregnancy to start preparing preparing the mammaries to be able to release milk.